All right, let's talk about music for a second. I'm going to show you a video of a young man who makes a list, and you're going to probably guess that I've taken umbrage with his list, and his list is of the greatest musical tragedies by decade. Now, as you know, I'm a huge Deadhead. Love the Grateful Dead. This is my world. And if you've been following me for any period of time, you also know that I fucking despise Nirvana. There were more than a few major tragedies in the music world in the 1990s. Now, some might not view the death of Jerry Garcia in August of 1995 as a tragedy. We certainly do. But he lists Kurt Cobain's suicide as the biggest musical tragedy of the 1990s. I'm going to show you the list here at the end of it. I can't agree with that. I cannot agree with that. Kurt Cobain was influential to millions. Kurt Cobain and Nirvana influenced untold number of bands. In my opinion, they did not have the influence and reach that the Grateful Dead did. That Jerry Garcia did. In my opinion. It's just, they didn't. Tom, they were the first big band of an entire new genre, grunge. Yes. They were. You want to know who kicked off hair metal? Who do you think kicked off hair metal? Of all the hair metal bands that you can remember, who do you think kicked off hair metal? It's probably none of the people that you're thinking. It's Quiet Riot with a cover of, I think it's Slade's Come On Feel the Noise. That's what kicked off hair metal. When you think of hair metal, do you think of Quiet Riot as one of the biggest bands ever, or Quiet Riot's Come On Feel the Noise as the anthem of hair metal? No, not really. I mean, in some cases, some people might look at it that way because it is the song that kicked it off. But in general, you think of a bunch of different hair metal bands, right? Same thing with grunge. People think of all kinds of different music. Nirvana just so happened to be the first one. And yes, they were very influential, no doubt about it, but do you really think Kurt Cobain was as influential and inspired as many people? And left as much of a mark on the music industry as Jerry Garcia did? I disagree with the notion. Anyway, here's his overall list.
The biggest music tragedy of every decade. As always, totally subjective, nobody's wrong. I thought about putting Hank Williams in the 1950s because of how important he was to country music and how he was only 29 years old when he passed away, but I think one of the earliest tragedies in music is the day the music died. Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, Richie Valens, and pilot Roger Peterson, nobody on that plane was even at the age of 30. Buddy Holly, one of the most influential musicians of all time. Richie Valens had accomplished much more in 8 months when he was doing music at 17 years old than a lot of folks do when they're 30. Big Bopper was a visionary every sense of the word. He's one of the first people that saw a music video coming long before it even was thought of. So the loss of 3 young lives, all before the age of 30, all visionaries, all tremendous talents, especially for their age, that to me was the easy choice for the 1950s. The 1960s was a little bit tough because you had Patsy Cline and Otis Redding. I think I leaned a little more towards Patsy, but Otis was younger, and Otis had sitting on the dock at the Bay. He had hard to handle. He was everywhere at a young age. He was only 26 years old. Patsy Cline, though, one of the greatest voices in music history, in my opinion. Her wreck was a lot more violent than Otis's wreck was, but nonetheless, a wreck is a wreck, and they both passed away way too early. So to me, I'm going to go with both of them. Patsy and Otis, I think, deserve a spot on this list for not just a regular musician passing away, but given the talent that they had and how much more they had to do, Patsy and Otis, I think, are a safe bet. We're going to cheat once more. The 1970s is going to have 3 people because of the club they're part of, the 27 Club. Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, all passing away within 18 months of each other. all passing away in the early 1970s. Brian Jones, another member of the 27 Club, passed away not long before these people did. It's incredibly sad. The 27 Club consistently gets brought up in regards to someone who passed away. Obviously, at age 27, you had Joplin, you had Hendrix, you had Jones, you had Winehouse, you had Cobain, all these people, Robert Johnson, but half of them died in the early 70s. You know, Jim Morrison, one of the best frontmen of all time. Janis Joplin, that crazy voice she had and just how rebellious she was. Jimi Hendrix, one of the best guitarists of all time. All of them being gone within that short span. The Led Zeppelin plane crash, obviously, later on in the decade, Elvis passing away young. The 70s was marred with a lot of tragedy, but I really don't think anything comes close to the loss of all three of them that quickly. Joplin, Morrison, and Hendrix like that were gone, and they were all 27. So I think half of the 27 Club for the 1970s is appropriate. The 1980s, the very early portion of the 80s, December of 1980, actually, the first loss of a Beatle, John Lennon, unfortunately being taken from us way too soon in New York. I got to go John Lennon. I almost went Randy Rhoads. Randy Rhoads was a lot younger, and Randy Rhoads perished in a plane wreck as opposed to John, who just perished at the hands of somebody else. But considering John's impact and all that John was able to do for music, you know what I mean? If you're one of the Beatles, you change the game. You know, whether or not someone likes you or not, and John is one of the most important musicians of all time. So I feel like being 40 years old and what happened to him obviously happening to this day, one of the biggest tragedies in music history. I know people are kind of torn between John's personality and his music. Some don't like him as a person, but I don't think anyone deserved to be taken away from us like that. And again, Randy Rhoads is passing, incredibly sad. The man who was largely responsible for helping Ozzy get off the ground again after Black Sabbath kicked him out. He was 26, I believe, when he passed away in that awful plane wreck in Florida. But yeah, to me, I just think that John Lennon's passing to this day is one of the 10 most significant music passings of all time. Even if he was 40, it didn't have to happen like that. So the 80s for me, I got John Lennon. The 1990s is Kurt Cobain. You know, I've always said he's probably the most integral figure of the 1990s in regards to helping launch grunge off the ground. He was the frontman of Nirvana, you know what I mean? And Nirvana, arguably the biggest band of the 90s, and then Kurt was gone not long after 1990 even began. So I feel like, again, too, 27 years old, I know that he's a little different from everybody else on this list because, again, whether you believe it was he himself or someone else had some involvement, I'm not here to debate conspiracies, but Kurt being gone as fast as he was, especially at his age, that was significant, that was important, and that was horrible. So I feel like Kurt, for the 90s, is a pretty safe bet. Aaliyah was huge, and Aaliyah was incredibly young still. She was 21 years old when she passed in that plane wreck in the Bahamas after filming that music video. The reports about how it all happened is so up in the air about, there was the weight limit or whatever the case. The results still stand. She passed away young, and she was on fire. She was going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The late 90s, early 2000s, in regards to R&B, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who was bigger than her. So I feel like, again, an appropriate fit for 2000s, especially because she was 21 when she passed. Who knows how big she would have gotten. So I think Aaliyah for the 2000s is right. This 2010s one is brutally sad. This one is Christina Grimmie. Christina's story is the definition of tragic. You know, she got big on YouTube doing some cover songs. She got to 1 million subscribers at one point, was able to go on The Voice at one point, was so good that both Lil Wayne and Adam Levine offered her a contract pretty quickly after that. And she was doing well for herself. Again, when she passed, she was only 22 years old because at a random autograph signing in Florida, someone decided to get a gun and, yeah, with someone as young as her, someone who had max potential like she did, being recognized by well-known musicians already, despite being so young, kind of like Aaliyah in the case of she was only going to get better with age. I think her story and just how unnecessary and just how brutal that ending was for her. Unfortunately, yeah, she's the pick for 2010s. 2020 so far, I would say Take Off from Migos. That was really big.